This is Sarah at Scrapbook.com, and we're looking at a fun new mixed media item from the Crafters Workshop, and that is Stencil Butter. Look how pretty this is. Now, I've already used some of this, but today we're going to look at 5 different ways to use Stencil Butter. We're going to talk about what Stencil Butter is, some of its unique properties, and we're going to look at the whole new color line. So you definitely want to stick around to the end to see all these fun ways to use Stencil Butter. All right, so first, we're going to take a look at what Stencil Butter is. Now, I made this really wonderful board to show all the different colors of Stencil Butter, and I'm going to show you the jars too. But on the left side, we have the Stencil Butter taken out with a palette knife. On the right side, we have it painted with water. So what's cool about this medium is you can use it with water to get really beautiful watercolor effects, but you can also use it with a palette knife. Now, this is a soft modeling paste. It holds its peaks and its valleys when it dries, but it dries very quickly. It dries in 15 to 20 minutes, so you can layer and get on with your project very quickly. So these are the colors. We have Orchid, Ocean Blue, Turquoise, and I'm moving it around because it has a nice shimmer, Terre Verte, Lime Green, Chartreuse, Gamboge, Marigold, Crimson, and Fuchsia. Really beautiful colors that look great. Now, these Stencil Butters can also be mixed with the other goodies, the mixed media goodies from the Crafters Workshop. So that's something to keep in mind too. You can mix these even with their metallic paste, all sorts of stuff. This one is the Lime Green. So let's take a look at a few different ways to use this really, really fun Stencil Butter that you're going to love. So the first way that we're going to look at is making a rainbow. So here is a finished project that I made. And what's fun about this is all of the colors blend together beautifully on the background to make a really fun rainbow. And you can also make a rainbow just how I showed you with this fun color swatch or scale by using the palette knife, or you can use the watercolor brush or a brush that you have that works with acrylic paints. Those will all work well. So let's get started. Alrighty, so you're going to need a palette knife to do this fun rainbow. You clean mine off a little better. And or a paintbrush, depending on what look you like. If you like the watercolor look, you're going to want a paintbrush. If you like the thick, pasty, peaks and valleys look that I mentioned, you're going to want a palette knife, so you can choose. You can start with any color of the rainbow. I like to start with red, so I'm going to use the Crimson Stencil Butter. And you're going to see exactly how fun this looks. So you really don't need that much. Set this up here. And you're just going to add it to your canvas or board. Now, you do need to use either watercolor paper, a media board, something that's porous but won't hold moisture. And you can just scrape it right on. And it's going to hold all of the texture. So you can really, if you like artsy, kind of messy looks, see how I'm moving the palette knife to kind of give it some texture? You can keep that. If you want to smooth it out, it is smooth like butter. And you can smooth it out. So you can really pick. Excellent. Now, this does dry, like I said, very quickly, so you'll need to clean your tools and especially your brushes right away if you are using them. All right, next I'm going to use the Marigold Stencil Butter, and I have a little bit of red on here, so I'm going to wipe my palette knife off. Okay. All right, we're going to do the same thing with orange. And you can go right on top of the red if you want to blend them a little bit and make some fun textures. And again, you can smooth it out if you want. Ooh, that looks really fun. And you've created a really fun rainbow. Now, that's not all I wanted to show you with the rainbow. You can actually use your watercolor brush. And by watercolor brush, I just mean any soft bristle brush like this. Oh, I'm already getting messy. Okay. And before the color dries, this red, oh, it is still wet. You can, if you want, pull that color. Look at that. I'm just barely, you hold your brush nice and loose, and you can just barely grab the color. And if it's like, oh no, I grabbed too much red, that's too strong, just get a little more water. You can smear it around. And then you can just bring this down to fill up your entire board. And the watercolor part you can see is very fast. So if you're like, oh, I want to make a rainbow, but I don't have a lot of time, we'll just add water. And you're going to see you can make a rainbow very quickly. And this would be so fun for backgrounds, for fun DIY signs and decor, art projects on canvas with your friends or your family. Ooh, look at that blue. How pretty is that? Perfect. So that shows how fast and easy it is to make a really beautiful rainbow background. And look at that. That shimmers and shines and will hold its shimmer and shine when it dries. And give it 15 to 20 minutes. And all of those fun lumps and peaks and valleys will stay put. And you'll have a beautiful rainbow that you could later come back and do even more over. So next, we're going to be looking at how to make painted backgrounds for your stenciling. So I made this really fun coffee bar sign that would be so cute to hang up above your coffee station in your house or wherever. And we're going to look at how to do a fun painted kind of abstract background. And then we're going to stencil the word coffee and the word bar. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this fun abstract background. Now, a trick to making really pretty abstract backgrounds is picking colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. If you're not exactly sure which colors are next to each other on the color wheel, totally fine. Why would we know that? You can go ahead and look it up. Just look up a simple color wheel. So I'm going to pick colors that are right next to each other. They're colors that usually look similar. For this one, I'm going to use yellow, I'm going to use green, and I'm going to use marigold, orange. So it's marigold, chartreuse, and gamboge. And we're going to use those interchangeably. So I like to start with a darker color that I'm using because I feel like it's easier to blend later. And what's great about these is they have some paint that gets stuck in the lid, so you can actually just pull from that with your paintbrush, which is what I like to do, because you'll find you only need a tiny little bit to use and to make little paintings. So this is really about adding stuff anywhere, which I know freaks some people out, but I like to just add a splotch. Now this dries very quickly, so you'll want to work in the same area and then move on to a different area. You don't want to add your paint here and then come back to it because it might dry. So I added my stencil butter right there. And I like to just keep adding water to my brush and coming over here, picking up some of that pigment, moving it over there, moving it over there. Now, if you look, a really easy way, because you might be asking, how do you know where to put the splotches? A really easy way to know where to put the splotches for this specific project is, look, I'm kind of spacing them out evenly. There's kind of even amounts of space between them. So for this, because we're going to add so many colors, you can just be like, all right, I'm just going to add them almost like polka dots, but I'm just scribbling back and forth. You can just scribble with this, which is really fun. If you'll notice, I keep tapping my water. The water is what moves the paint around or the stencil butter. If you're like, oh, it won't move, it's because you need water. So that's probably enough for that color. I like to then, quote unquote, clean off my brush by making squiggles. And by squiggles, I mean simply that, just really fast. And then that cleans my brush off and it adds just some fun flavor. So I'm going to close my orange up because it dries so quickly. I don't want to risk ruining any of it. Okay, next I'm going to use gamboge. And same thing, I'm going to get my brush wet. I'm going to, let me pull from the lid. And same thing, but this time I have some guides. I'm going to go right underneath all my orange splotches. And you use the exact same pattern. So there you have a really, really fun abstract background that later you can stencil on top of, which is really, really great fun for your crafting, your friends, your family. If you want to like have a little party and do it with other people, it just makes for a really good time. You can let them sit aside. Just takes 15 minutes to dry, a little less because there's water, and then you can add your stenciling on top. So once you let it dry, you can now add some fun stenciling on top. And earlier I showed you the coffee bar sign that I made. I'm going to recreate that to show you how to use Stencil Butter with a stencil, which is in the name. And you can use your palette knife. You'll want to use your palette knife. And then as far as color, it's up to you. I want to use something that's similar, but also will stand out. So I'm thinking what comes next after chartreuse, that yellowy green, another shade of green perhaps. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now we'll use it just like we did with the rainbow. You're just going to scoop some out. You can be a little more generous with this one. And you can start wherever you want. I'm going to start right here with the F's because there's a lot of space there. And you're just going to press down and start spreading it around. And this, you can see how smooth it is. This stencil even has some really tiny areas for the beautiful lettering. And you can just get right in there. What's great about this is part of the unique properties of Stencil Butter is the fact that it keeps, like I've said before, the peaks and valleys. So you can let it stay chunky. You don't have to smooth it out. You can also smooth it out. That's what's really fun about it. Either way, you can do that. Alrighty, the reveal. And you can find all of the Stencil Butters at Scrapbook.com. Look at that. And voila, look at that fun coffee bar sign you have. You can get some holes in it. You can hang it up on your wall. You do all kinds of stuff for your own little personal coffee bar. The next technique that I'm going to show you is really simple, but I'm calling it Shimmery Stars. And I'm calling it that because this is the Slimline Star Sparkle stencil, which you can find at Scrapbook.com. And look at this fun media board that's cut out to be the same slimline size. And look at how shimmery these stars are. Now, you're going to be happy to know that the background was also made with Stencil Butter and water. So you don't even have to grab different supplies. You just grab your collection of Stencil Butters and you have everything you need to make a beautiful shimmery star background. Or that's even the centerpiece maybe. So let's go ahead and make it. So you'll want to grab a background, whatever type of board or paper you're using. And for this, I'm going to use Orchid, it's the purple one. Ocean Blue, the blue one. And Turquoise, just to add a pop of fun magic to it. So we're going to paint this exactly how we painted the other ones with your watercolor brush. So once you have the background all painted and it's the same way as before, you can just kind of honestly just squiggle it on. You're going to wait for that to dry 15 to 20 minutes and then we can add our shimmery stars. So you're going to grab your beautiful stencil. This is from the Crafters Workshop, like I mentioned, and we're going to place it on to add our beautiful shimmery stars. And what's fun about this is you can kind of move it around and pick where you want your stars in some way. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to be using gamboge to get the exact same shimmery star effect I got on this little sample. For this one, you're going to need to use your palette knife. So make sure you've cleaned it, or if it's stained, that the stains aren't coming off on your hands. And you're just going to hold down your stencil, or if you have a big enough surface, you can use something like mint tape to tape it down. And it's really easy. You're just going to add it on. I have a little bit of orange in here left from me making a mess, and that's totally fine. Look at another fun, pretty effect. You can smooth these out. I like to smooth them out so they all kind of have the same shimmery dimension. but you can also leave them really fun and chunky for different effects. Once you have the stenciling all complete and you have your color exactly where you want it, again, you're going to wipe off your palette knife and we're going to peel and reveal. This is like my favorite part. Look how pretty that is. And look at that. Now, what's fun about this is it's going to hold the texture, so when it's completely dry, you can rub your hand over it, and these actually feel like stickers, like they're bumped up is what I'm saying. It's almost embossed feeling. And this will do the exact same thing. So really fun technique of Shimmery Stars. So the next thing we're going to look at is something I'm calling color on color. And this is an example of that, where you have the color of the stencil butter right above the same color of the stencil butter. Because if you notice, when you use it with water, it makes it a little bit lighter. And then when you use it plain, it makes it a little bit more saturated. So you can actually use it on top of the color. This is gamboge on top of gamboge. So I'm going to show you this at a smaller scale, and we're just going to use one color so you can really see the effect of how the colors are different. So if you only want to buy one stencil butter, that's your budget, one stencil butter, you can still get diversity and make the same looks and projects with one color. So I'm going to use a 6x6 board, and I'm going to be using this really fun stencil from the Crafters Workshop. This is Sunny Butterfly, and it's the same one I used on the big project I just showed you, except I was using the 12x12. This is a 6x6, and again, you can get that at Scrapbook.com. So here's what the stencil looks like on its own. Before I put this down, I want to show you the effect that we're going for. So here's another 6x6. This is the stencil Cactus Dahlia. There we go. So you can see a lot of fun, fits right on this little 6x6 board, but we used the same colors with a little bit of fun splashes to make this, and we're going to do that with the butterfly. The trickiest part is picking which color we're going to use. I want to use something really fun, so I'm going to pick turquoise because I like it because it's kind of a peacock color. So first what we're going to want to do is the background. We'll put our little butterfly over here so we can see him. This we're going to be using our watercolor brush, some water, and the stencil butter itself. Now, our goal here, if you want to, you can do swirls and things like that. Totally fine. Our goal is to just cover the background because you won't see most of the background once you get this. Once you get the stencil on. It's more so to give the stencil something to pop against. So I hate to say it doesn't really matter what you do in the background, but in this case, it kind of doesn't, which can be really freeing, creatively speaking. You just play and do whatever you want and have a good time. So now we have it nice and mostly dried, and we're going to put our butterfly right on this. Now you can place it in the center. I, on my example, had it kind of flying off to the edge. I thought that was really whimsical and fun. For this one, I'm going to put it, I'm going to put it right in the center. Takes a second to decide. Okay, so now you're going to need your palette knife, and you're going to scoop up of the color that you're using. And this one, I don't necessarily want to cover the entire board just because I like a messy, artsy, splotchy look, but you can cover the entire board if you want. The only thing to think about is you're going to want to cover around your stencil, or else you're not going to see the negative space or the line of your stencil. So I'm going to start on the outside, and I'm going to make sure that I go around my stencil. That's also going to help it stick down so you don't have to hold it down as much. But I want to go all the way around. That way you can see the antennas. You can see the outline of the wing. Now again, because this is stencil butter, you can smooth it out or you can leave it chunky. It'll dry exactly how it is. Okay, so here's the messy fingers part. I went ahead and took my palette knife. It took me a minute, honestly, to kind of pop up the edge of the stencil. I'm going to avoid messy fingers. Look at that. How fun is that? Here you have the same color on the same color, which means your colors go well together because it's the same color. Here I use turquoise, and you can make a beautiful, really fun little art piece that you could put up somewhere, or you could do that on your backgrounds or wherever you want. So it's color on color with stencil butter. So the last technique I'm going to show you today with Stencil Butter is splattering, which is really fun, and drawing or painting with your paintbrush with Stencil Butter. So I did this fun outline, and then I did these really nice little splotches. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So, like I mentioned for the colors, you're going to want to pick a color in the same color family if you're going along this design that we did earlier, but you can pick really whatever color you want. So I'm going to pick another green. I'm going to use lime green, and we're going to splatter with it, and we're going to draw with it. So this is a moment where you can add a little bit of color to your palette if you have a mixing area. If not, you can use the lid because you're going to want it to be a little bit watery. So you're going to dip your brush in your water, and I like to twirl my brush to keep that nice fine point. It squishes out any paint that's getting stuck in there and making your brush too chunky. And the water also helps it become easier to draw with. And so I'm going to do an outline because that's fun. Now, because this has an abstract look, you don't have to worry about your line being completely straight. If you want to add a few squiggles, why not? And I do one side at a time. You can move your board if it helps you, or you can leave it just so. I'm going to do some swirls. Sometimes it helps to go faster to get the line straighter. Definitely, if you're concerned, you can practice on something that isn't your project. And if you think you're going to have too squiggly of a line, just purposefully make it squiggly. Okay, so now with splatters, we know that, well, you may not know, but we know that you need a very liquidy substance in order to make it splatter. So I'm going to add a fair bit of water here to my lid. And then before I splatter, I'm going to dip my brush in the water one more time, and then I'm just going to tap. And you don't want to be holding it on just super tight, or your brush with this hand super tight, or else you're not going to get a splatter. It's going to be holding onto it pretty loosely. If you have a splatter box, you can use it. If you have something like the glass media mat, you can do it on there. You can honestly just put down newspaper if that's what you have. You can do different colors, so on and so forth. But that's going to dry in a really fun way and just add some extra dimension, extra fun, extra creativity to all of your projects. You can always go back and add drawing and splatters with the Stencil Butters. Thank you so much for joining us today to look at Stencil Butter, this fun new mixed media from the Crafters Workshop. Definitely check out Stencil Butter at Scrapbook.com and make sure to check out all of the items that the Crafters Workshop has to offer, like stencils, other really fun mixed media items, and more. You don't want to miss it, so head on over to Scrapbook.com today.